We choose the difficulty of the game ourselves. We choose the starting conditions ourselves. What vibrations a particle of consciousness accepts and rejects. So, depending on that, it ends up in the point of space where this is present. A particle of consciousness can have very primitive needs, and these primitive needs, determining in which body it will manifest, happen instantly, like an impulse, a conglomerate of everything you imagine and strive for. These processes are defined in the Bordeaux space. It's madness, but it's madness when you see it from the outside.
There is a question. If you chose embodiment in a material body on planet Earth, then why are you spending the brief time of human life on these practices, traveling to unknown places?
I am currently preparing for a trip to Peru. I think that's quite a well-known place. Yes, I traveled there and we filmed the second course in Bali. Also, a well-known location. I do not strive to travel to unknown places. Yes, when I just started my journey, when I was 12 years old, and I exited my physical body with my energy body, that was quite curious. But after some time, a few years, I got tired of it all because I saw that there was no end or limit to it. Wherever I directed my perception, it was bottomless. And at some point, I just started to wonder how reality is structured if I cannot reach any edge or end of it. Already being a trained person, so to speak, being a person who has gone through a very ancient tradition and absorbed the knowledge that is still preserved there. I have completely stopped navigating the multidimensionality of reality. I do not engage in that. I do not teach astral projection. I teach self-exploration so that each person can understand their nature. And if we talk about where I am heading, I am moving towards freedom. I am moving to where this infinity ends, no matter how strange that may sound. But if we draw a very simple analogy, when you move in a circle, your movement can be infinite. If you step off this circle, then you can see this infinity from the outside. This entire multifaceted, multidimensional reality is that very circle along which a particle of consciousness moves. I intend to stop this circular movement, the wheel of samsara, so to speak, and still observe all these processes from the outside. That is, to gain a freedom that does not imply that I continue to drift somewhere in this multidimensionality.
Anton, do you see your presence here as an initially inevitable event?
No, it is a matter of choice. It was an absolutely conscious, rational choice when I was still in a state of a particle of consciousness. A particle of original consciousness, of which each of us is each, and a person makes the decision to appear here, each. Every particle of consciousness, guided by its own intentions, is born here. Every particle of consciousness, guided by their intentions, choosing the parents with whom it will appear, each one. But as soon as this particle of consciousness immerses itself in the material world, it becomes very difficult for it to remember this. Therefore, in most cases, we can get lost in rejection, get lost in misunderstanding, get lost in the rejections of where we have found ourselves, completely forgetting that we chose this ourselves. The same, you might say, how can this be? I will now give an example of how this can be. Those who have children who have played computer games themselves may remember that at some point you want to increase the difficulty of the game. You choose very hard there. I remember when Dendy and Sega were around, there was a mode called very hard. It was very difficult. And you turn on this mode. Then after some time, you are already frustrated, twitchy, yelling at the screen, throwing the joystick at the wall. Now probably there is no joystick. You break the keyboard, smash the monitor, but you chose this difficulty of the game yourself. You started this game yourself, chose the difficulty yourself, sat down to play it yourself, and then you sit there getting frustrated. It's the same here. We choose the difficulty of the game ourselves. We choose the starting conditions ourselves. And once we find ourselves in these conditions, we start to get frustrated and nervous. You get tense. It's madness, but it's madness when you see it from the outside. When you are in this madness, you can't stop yourself. You just roll into the abyss. And so, practices basically allow a person to enter a state where they gradually begin to observe these processes as a continuous flow, like a wave moving through space. And part of this movement passes through physical embodiment. And when a person sees their energy, when they feel it, when they become aware of it, it becomes obvious to them what exactly is constricting, spasming, and destroying them. And it destroys not only as a physical body, but also as consciousness. And what, on the contrary, relaxes, releases, and allows one to move forward, now is the age of Kali. In the age of Kali, the majority of consciousness particles that have come here will most likely not go anywhere else. This will be their final decision to come here.
Continuing on the topic, there is a comment. Good day. It's just unclear why one particle of consciousness is born in a human body, while another is born in an animal. Moreover, the conditions of birth in a human body are very different. What is this due to?
The form of consciousness. Consciousness also has a form, just as a material object has a form. This form is composed of its relationships, interactions with the energies of manifestation. I will now try to explain this as much as possible. Here are puzzles. Puzzles consist of many pieces, many separate forms. Each form can only be where it fits. Puzzles are made in such a way that two different pieces cannot fit into the same place. Here, at this point in space, like a huge puzzle of the universe, there are also certain forms where only specific particles of consciousness fit, because each piece of consciousness also has a certain form, but it is not a geometric form. It is a form of acceptance. That is how our world is woven from strings of energy. These strings are called the threads of Devi Shakti. Everything here is fundamentally assembled from disparate energies. It is the same as musical compositions being assembled from notes. Each note is indeed one vibration. Depending on which notes, which vibrations a piece of consciousness accepts and rejects, it ends up in that point in space where it is present. That is, the more rejection you have, the more you reject these original frequencies, the more primitive form you will end up in. The more you strive for a certain frequency, the more primitive your body will be. If you, as a piece of consciousness, strive for only one thing, then most likely it will be an organism that does only that. However, if you strive for something more or less diverse, that is, if you still want to hear some composition from these notes, then you will be realized in a more suitable being. The most multifaceted being is a human. And those pieces of consciousness that have chosen, that have entered human form, are those pieces of consciousness that claim the maximum spectrum of perception. But, one thing is what you claim, what you want, and quite another is what you actually are. It's like when you come to work and say, I want a salary of 100 million. What do they ask you? And what can you do to claim such a salary? If you say, well, I used to be the owner of Tesla, Microsoft, and Apple combined, they say, well, okay, probably yes, maybe we are ready to pay you that much. But if you say, I graduated from university yesterday and came to you today, well, they will probably tell you, don't linger, go on. No one will pay you that much here. And in reality, it's the same. If we represent ourselves as the acceptance of absolutely all energies, absolutely all manifestations, then we have a very high threshold for whims of what we want. However, if there is a significant degree of rejection within us, even having realized ourselves, in a human body, in a physical human body, it will be a rather questionable life, so to speak. Unsatisfied, constrained, monotonous, unpleasant, but these are just the starting conditions. This does not obligate us to live our whole life like that. By simply claiming something, we receive exactly to the extent that our level of acceptance is high. And right now, shoes might fly at me, but what if there's a maniac? What if a man is beating someone? Yes, all of this happens. No one falls dead. You don't run out into the street screaming when you watch a movie where one superhero dismembered another superhero. No, you understand perfectly well that this is just a movie. You don't try to make rulers, governments, Yes, write 100,000 million laws just because a Tamagotchi died in this plastic thing. No, you understand perfectly well that this is just a toy that gives the opportunity to have some fun, and the fact that it can die in its virtual world, well, there's nothing terrible about it. From the creator's perspective, it's all a game. From the perspective of the one who is the primary cause, there is nothing important here at all. He is just entertaining himself. He is alone. If we start to say something is good, something is bad, we narrow the spectrum of our perception. We make ourselves more primitive. We reject some parts of the original, which are an integral part of the original. It's the same as asking the question, does God love the devil? If you answer that God cannot help but love, then your worldview is more or less sound. However, if you sincerely say to yourself, yes, God hates the devil, then there are very big problems with your worldview. It does not correspond to reality.
We can say that from the perspective, so to speak, of the energy of the soul, we choose our embodiment ourselves. That is, a person is an animal, a stone.
There are several factors. I was just talking about rejection. To some extent, it can even be a kind of contempt. That is, contempt for certain energies that we do not like. At the same time, they are still part of the original. And by rejecting a part of the original, we cut off our ability to enter certain processes. Therefore, no, the spectrum of choice is limited. Another thing is that a particle of consciousness may have very primitive needs. And these primitive needs determine in which body it will manifest. They determine. That is, it's not that a particle of consciousness says, I need to think about being a dog, an elephant, or a human. It doesn't quite happen that way. It happens instantly, like an impulse, a conglomerate of everything you imagine and strive for. And suddenly, you're already screaming somewhere in a maternity hospital, for example. Or suddenly, you're being incubated in an egg by some bird. It doesn't happen that you think about it. It happens in such a way that you are drawn to something, and you, in accordance with your nature, just appear where it aligns the most. These are very instantaneous processes. And through these processes are defined in the Bordeaux space. There is such a space, and it is called differently. Somewhere it is called the Nagual space, somewhere it is called purgatory, and somewhere it is called the Bordeaux space. And there, it is precisely determined instantly what will happen next. And there is no lying, no thinking, no pondering. That is, what you strive for and what you are. Boom. And that's it. It starts to spoil.
And if you had a specific choice in your incarnation here, would something change?
If I had a choice, I wouldn't have even appeared here.
Well, let's say it exists.
Means I don't exist?
Would you remain yourself? Or perhaps would you like to experience something?
No, I wouldn't have appeared here at all if I had such a choice. There's no reason for me to be here if my level of awareness isn't high enough that I'm just sitting there, picking my nose, choosing where to go next.
I'm curious.
Well, I mean, why, no. The reason for being here is again the balance between my goal and my abilities. Here I am, appearing here. It means how eagerly I strive to realize my goal, my intention, with that speed, that effectiveness, that intensity, and what I represent as a particle, as a form of consciousness. Here, at this place and time, the conditions are most favorable for me, and this was a determining factor. So when I say that each particle of consciousness decided to appear here, it's not like you're sitting there, pondering, choosing, looking through catalogs or knowing. No, it's your determination and what you envision, your form. That's it. Snap, snap, you're already here.
One of the viewers writes, about ayahuasca mushrooms, Anton. I can say that many of my acquaintances who participated in the ceremonies with some regularity have significantly changed their lives, both in body and spirit. All means are good for the benefit. Exorcism in mushrooms with immersion into the subconscious, recoding, another personality. And then they practice tracking and transforming the slightest manifestations of what has been previously accumulated in the moment. Do you think that these methods, so to speak, of recoding the subconscious can have a positive effect on a person?
It is obvious that there are people who engage in this, alongside those who, for example, drink vodka, alongside those who drink expensive cognacs, or there are people who smoke cigars like a steam train. from which I don't know. Probably my lungs would be expelled after just one puff. That is, people engage in all sorts of interesting things in this world. And so, that is, they engage in this, they reprogram their personalities. Naturally, when you experience something very vivid in your life, you change as a person. But you also change as a person when you experience vividly, not under the influence of substances, but in your life. For example, a person has strived to be a champion, and he did. With a medal on him, he changes as a person. He changes as a person. Or when a person practiced with friends, trained in a garage, played musical moments, then they stand before an audience, I don't know, a hall of thousands, and at that moment he realizes that they made it. Yes, they started from the garage. Does he change as a person? Of course he changes as a person. Therefore, there are many factors that change you as a person. But there is one nuance. You age and die, regardless of what you did here. And when a person realizes that no matter how much you indulge in various substances, no matter how many different achievements you attain, you cannot escape death. You still won't have enough skills and opportunities to do anything about it. At that moment, a person starts to think, but what is all this for? Why did I reprogram my personality? Why did I travel to some incredible worlds? You can enter these worlds by learning to exit your body. You exit your body, fly wherever you want. So you see, all of this has a place, but this is not spirituality. It's just a thrill. It's just a pastime. I don't know a single person who would say, I've been indulging in something all my life, and now I absolutely know how to jump over this moment of aging and dying and drift freely through the universe. Mostly no, such people burned out and went to the other world just like everyone else.
What consequences can this have for the higher self, for the soul, for the energy body?
Nothing special. If a person goes too far in something, it will create a lot of problems for them. So if he goes too far with substances, it will create a lot of problems for him. He will lose a huge amount of his luminosity, he will lose a huge amount of consciousness and turn into a vegetable. If a person goes too far in sports, he will become disabled. He will lose the health of his physical body. And then he will also lose his mental health. If a person goes too far, I don't know, in anything at all, well, just in anything, if we go too far, we break down. Yes, one can break down very quickly under substances. Similarly, one can break down very quickly in sports. How many people now, bodybuilding has become popular, right? How many people in their 20s and 30s have already kicked the bucket? Why? They went too far. That's why. You can't just cut from the shoulder and say that it's all bad. No, it's not any worse than everything else. But if you are engaged in this, if you move in such ways, you still need to keep your finger on the pulse and realize whether you are still playing or if you have already lost. The practices that I show are about self-exploration, about realizing who you are and how this reality is structured. Knowing this, mastering it, you can engage in anything. Mastering it, you can do sports without degrading yourself. By mastering this, you can fulfill your desires and whims without provoking fire and anger towards yourself.
What practices, for example, can be used to satisfy and fulfill your desires?
Energetic practices, those that I demonstrate, are steps to immerse in skills and possibilities in extrasensory perception. From simple skills and abilities to the most complex ones, which are the highest form of mastery. The first level is practical energy. The second level is beyond speed. It's the shedding of the cocoon. That's when you become even faster. You're already doing well, and then you become even faster. The third level is the fiery pillar, when you are abundant and fast, when you have power, when you do not run out. And the knowledge about the yantra is the very body of your consciousness. That is, we first study energy inside, outside, the body of the first attention, the body of the second attention, and as a result, thanks to the opportunities that open up, we gain access to the perception of the body of our consciousness. And these are the most sacred knowledge that I have managed to find, which exists in humanity. Perhaps there is something sacred, but I still do not know it.
Does it have any fundamental significance from which course a person should start? If they want a hard level, for example, but they have no experience, can they jump into
Yes,
right onto some step?
I simply urge people to maintain a sound perception of themselves. If a person truly has abilities and has already gone through many schools, then why not? Why not start from the end? And if a person doesn't even know what the word chakra means, it's probably better for them not to jump in. There should simply be sound reasoning, a sound mindset, and a sound approach to oneself and to one's own, to your opportunities and abilities. The same goes. You come to the gym, you don't say, come on, load me up with 300-kilogram plates. I'm going to bench press now. If you've never done this, the barbell will just split in half under its own weight. And if you are already a healthy, muscle-bound person who has thrown 50-kilogram bags to a height of 3 meters onto your own shed, then yes, you can train with a 300-kilogram barbell. Why not? But here it is important to understand that the system is structured in such a way that it goes from the simplest to the most complex, through the stages that unleash so many abilities within you, that they become applicable in everyday life, to the point where that everyday life becomes boring because you simply don't know what else to desire. And these abilities are used to perceive the subtlest, most hidden, and most elusive processes called the structure, the body, of one's own consciousness.
We will leave the link to the courses in the description below the video. Now, we will move on to the next topic. The viewer writes, how much longer can I listen to this? Got angry, hooked an entity, had a scandal, hooked an entity, many sorcerers, and witches. They attach themselves to remove a rival or bind a man. Anton, I would like to expand on this topic a bit and learn your perspective. There is indeed a lot of information about entities and other beings. There are truly energetically strong people who use their abilities, so to speak, for the good of others. They heal, they help, but this world is dual. And there is another layer of people who also possess certain abilities, but they use them differently. For example, as mentioned in the comment, binding a man, that is, love spells, removing someone, which is conditionally a curse, conspiracies for death. Many similar stories and situations from those who have encountered this. I would like to know your perspective on this and why it might work.
Well, first of all, I agree with the person. How much longer can you listen to this? Go and practice, go develop yourself. Until you listen to this, nothing changes. But then it starts to become a one-sided perception that only entities can be highlighted. But no, not only that. You can actually kill another with the power of thought if your thought carries weight. And if it doesn't carry weight, then no matter how much you try, nothing will happen. This has always been the case in our world. It is enough to simply read the oldest scriptures, and they are full of these stories. It was then, it is now, and despite this, humanity evolves, lives, and everything is fine for it. Some say, how much longer can we listen to this? But if it exists, then it should be listened to.
And what consequences does this bring for those who perform these, so to speak, ceremonies and rituals?
Well, first of all, the overwhelming majority of people you can find through an internet search or in a newspaper ad are completely incapable of anything. It's just a spectacle. It's just a performance, so that a person can do something nasty and feel joy in their soul. He seems to have calmed down, and accordingly, from this performance, nothing will happen to the one who performs it. That's why they engage in this for years, for decades, and everything is fine for them. Why? Because nothing happens. People who truly possess this ability, who can genuinely perform a ritual and kill someone, cannot be found through an ad. They also, of course, exist, but they do not trade this left and right. Because how you relate to reality is how reality relates to you. And all of this needs to be balanced. It needs to be somehow leveled out for yourself. Can this be leveled out? Yes. Can it be balanced? Yes. Why does no one ask the question, there was World War II, everyone was killed, just piled up in heaps. Humanity has not gone extinct. People came back from the front, got married, had children, everything was good for them. And why, if a person commits murder through rituals, through magic, should reality relate to them differently? It is still the same murder. It is the same if we take possession, various evil eyes, curses. Well, yes, a person at war, they are fighting. Some fight for money, those are contract soldiers, and they also don't fall dead on the spot. So this all has a place. And this position that, oh, he cast a spell there and now nothing will happen to him. Everything will be fine for him. Because either he knows how to do it, And he does it because he knows how to do it? If I don't know, right now, take me and send me to Formula One racing. I will make it to the first turn, and that will be the end of it, because I don't know how to do it. But if you take a professional racer and put them in a Formula One car, they will complete a lap and even show some time. People who do this professionally understand everything perfectly. They know, and it all works efficiently for them, and they won't face any consequences because they know how it's done. People who put on performances have no reason to do this. And the people who are just starting to get into it, who haven't figured anything out themselves, no one has trained them, no one has given them hints, they just pushed their way in. They will have problems, yes. They will be the first to be cut down because you are getting into something you don't understand. Such people suffer.
That is, for a person, for example, with strong developed energy, such influences essentially have no effect.
I was just talking about those people who exert this influence. The people on whom this influence is directed, the first thing to understand is that they deserve it. That is, they have already committed actions that allowed such a force to be directed against them.
And what if they haven't?
Well, look, you're telling me it's dark outside, and I'm saying yes, the sun is below the horizon, but what if it's not below the horizon? Where is it then?
If, for example, often the story involves some kind of love triangle and unrequited love. For example, a person who does not share your feelings, but they are not a bad person. They just do not share them. But the person who, for example, casts a spell on them exerts some influence. But that doesn't mean that the one who rejected someone's feelings deserved it or is somehow flawed.
And if a person uses the art of seduction, what is he frozen in? Then now he will fall.
But this is not about working with something dark.
What difference does it make? You take actions to achieve a result. You can perform these actions on a physical level to seduce. You can perform these actions on a psychological level to persuade. You can perform these actions on an energetic level, yes, by appealing to energetic processes, to forces. What difference does it make? What fundamentally changes because of this? Yes, we constantly influence each other. Constantly. But again, let's be honest. In 10 cases where two people do not love each other, 9 do not love each other because they are idiots, not because someone has enchanted someone. And only one case, yes, there may really be some energetic background. But again, what difference does it make if you attracted him with energy or seduced him with physicality? You still influenced his free will? That's it. And there are plenty of such cases. And again, no one falls dead. They live normally, get divorced, get together. They marry several times, remarry several times. This happens. That's our world. That's the age of Kali.
Let's move on to the next topic. A viewer writes, God does not punish us. The Almighty loves us. It is we who punish ourselves with our bad deeds. Anton, is everything happening to us really a consequence of our choices? And are we, so to speak, subjecting ourselves to payment?
Yes, that's absolutely right. It's one thing when you are aware of it, and quite another when you not only are not aware, but can't even perceive it. I constantly encourage people to learn, to perceive themselves as a whole. When a person perceives themselves as a whole, they are not tempted to say that someone is punishing them because they see how it works. The same goes. Let's imagine that right now in this studio, which has quite a few different objects, we start moving with our eyes closed. It is obvious that I will bump into some objects, and it is clear that some objects will cause me pain and suffering because there are different items here. Even a sword is hanging, but that doesn't mean someone is punishing me. It just means that I am blind. The same goes for everything else. When a person moves through life and feels pain, it means they missed something they bumped into. And it doesn't mean that someone is standing with a stick and hitting them on the head every time they behave incorrectly. No, but yes, we can bump into things. Yes, we can take actions that will have very unpleasant consequences for us. And to talk about all this, no batteries in the cameras would be enough to tell it all. But I can encourage a person to open their extrasensory eyes and just see how it all is structured. I call for this. Guys, study. The ability to perceive reality in a broader spectrum. As soon as you do this, many things that seem unfair, incomprehensible, or inexplicable become absolutely obvious. And from such a state, a person can move very quickly, fulfilling almost any of their whims, and nothing will happen to them for it. There will be no retribution, there will be no punishment, The main thing is to have the ability to feel reality on an energetic level. This opens the eyes.
Thank you, Anton, for the answers. Be sure to write your impressions and questions. Perhaps we will answer them in the next video.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.